Welcome into another episode of Debate Night. We have a very interesting episode today because there has been quite a little talk after USDGC and more specifically Throw Pink. A little bit of controversy going on in the disc golf world right now, which is just perfect for this show. And we've got four panelists today. Back with the 4-box setup. It's going to be great. We've got a new one as well. We're joined by Brodie today. He's not the new one.
No, but I do have a new laptop, and it's a game changer.
New laptop, too tall. We also got Robbie here as well.
Guys, I'm just letting you know that the third question of the main round, you're not going to skip to it, but you definitely want to stick around because it's either going to put me in the finals or will eliminate me and put me in debate night probation. So.
Oh, you're going to have such a bad take. You're going to have such a bad take.
And then
I can already tell.
We're joined by a new guest today. Jason. Jason's here today.
Nice to be on the show. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
That's right. First time caller, long time listener. That's what we like to see. All right, we're gonna jump right into this. We're not gonna.
I had a line ready, but that's all right.
I'm not even sure what just happened and how that just happened, but I skipped Hunter. Hunter's here too, I guess.
I just wanted to say I'm excited to be the first person to beat Brodie on his new laptop. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Oh. That's funny. My eyes just
I'm 2-0 in risk.
right
I've
across
not
the screen.
lost in risk on this laptop.
Good point. 2-0 in risk. Okay, here we go. We're gonna jump right into this. So, first topic, before we get into the extra scandal, I wanted to write this topic in because I was in the vendors village at USDGC for a lot of the event. Pros kind of wander through there often. I was able to talk with a few, and almost every pro that I was able to talk to had something to say about, and this is typical to disc golf, but something to say about the million bad breaks they got at USDGC. As much as pros like playing in this event, I think there is a good few that do. There seems to be quite a few that just aren't a fan of the stroke and distance, the tight margins, because they don't like the idea that they can throw the disc almost as well as somebody else and just be out of bounds by a foot versus 30 feet and get punished so brutally. I heard so many people talking about, oh, I'm throwing the disc just as well as I did last year when I did better, and it just didn't work out. The breaks are so fine, such fine lines, blah, 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 blah. So my question is, though most fans love the unpredictability of Winthrop Gold, many players seem to be upset with the bad breaks and punishment dished out to shots missing by small margin. Is the course too fluky, and does stroke and distance treat players unfairly in our sport of disc golf? Brodie, what do you think?
No.
Hit him with it.
No. Here's the thing. Let's break it down. You have a fairway that's 60 feet wide. You're probably trying to aim in the middle of the fairway, correct?
Yes.
I think everyone would assume that. And let's just say like a theoretical fairway. You're trying to aim in the middle of the fairway. If your disc lands out of bounds, you did not miss your landing zone by a foot. Even though your disc is 1 foot out of bounds, you did not miss your landing zone by a foot. You missed your landing zone by 31 feet because you were aiming for the middle of the fairway. I think we don't play courses like this all year. And so when we get to a course that is challenging like this and is punishing when you throw shots out of bounds, it's like, oh my gosh, I was throwing the disc so well, because we don't realize that throwing a shot when you're 300 feet away, throwing a shot 35 feet away from the basket, it's actually not a good shot. And on this course, it shows you that throwing 35 feet away from the basket is not a good shot. I think that's the big difference on this course is you can feel like I'm playing like I used to. I've been playing all season, and this is what's got me to top 10s, is what's got me to win tournaments. And then I come out here and I'm getting blown up. And that is because the margin of error that you can have on your shots actually is way lower. And then if you go through it too, you start thinking about hole one's basket is on a little bit of a hillside. You can get a roll away. We saw that with like Kristen Tatar's shot in the playoff. Hole two's basket, if you're on the left side, you're putting straight towards out of bounds. Hole three's basket, if you get greedy for it and try to go for that circle two putt because it's almost impossible to get to the basket, you can go long and get into some trees and make a really hard second putt. Hole five's basket, we saw Bradley Williams go straight OB with his putt. Hole six, you go OB there, you go to the drop zone. I did it. Tristan Tanner did it. Shout out to Tristan Tanner. Shout out to a bunch of other people where you just go for the putt, you miss it, it goes OB, you go for the putt again. You just keep reputting. Hole 7, not too much trouble around the green. I can keep going. Hole 8, baskets on a hill. You can get a roll away. Hole 9, we saw like people like Gannon Burr struggle with that hole where you can putt and go OB there. I mean, it is a course of where if you're off, you actually get punished. And we're used to playing courses of, hey, throw the disc anywhere, you have a birdie a putt. Oh, also, when you're 100 feet away, just run it because there's no real trouble in missing your 100-foot run. This is a course that's different than anything else. And that's why I think it is special. That's why I think it also is the future as far as like where disc golf is going, because you get these exciting kind of turn of events of where you're just like, I have no idea what's going to happen today.
Whew. That was a long one. Also,
it needed to be said, and you can take away a bunch of points. But
also,
that needed to be
shout
said.
out to, I gave you a point at one point, and it gave everybody a point somehow. Did you see that,
That's
Silas? Let's see what happens
Dirty,
again.
baby.
I think it was a
Well, I
glitch.
apologize for all the people having to listen to me rant
was a
there a little
glitch.
bit, but
Brody's not putting up with it. Robbie, what about you? What do you think?
I love it. I think that it is a beautiful course. I think it does challenge. It definitely stands apart in terms of what it's asking you to do. I'm going to elaborate a little more on a point that Brodie mentioned of the, like, we'll talk about this 60-foot fairway. I'm surprised one of the questions doesn't talk about the champ and the use of the champ and how we had the champ talk about the champ giving champ advice from the champ broadcast. So
You
the
can get a champ t-shirt.
mentioned, yeah, champ t-shirt, champ. So the champ mentioned that one thing that is really unique about Winthrop is the rolling hills in terms of how there are lots of fairways, lots of shots that there is rollaway potential that comes into it. But Brodie has a great point in that as wide as these fairways are, the more extreme you get to the edges, it does feel like for lots of the fairways, that's where the more extreme roll potential happens. Sure, you can have a sloped fairway. I believe hole 5, obviously I have to answer as the guy who's not been to the grounds here, but from at least the video, hole 5, most of the fairway looks like it does have a slight right to left slope leaning towards the water as you walk down. If you land in the middle of the fairway, sure, it's going to be somewhat, it's flat on a hill, but if you land up on the right side, you're on a steeper part of the hill. There are multiple points of the course where landing in the middle of the fairway does have its advantage to you. You even look at hole 18 that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about. And if you end up high on the hill, the people who landed low on the hill with the forehand coming in could flare up and get sort of a push towards the center of the fairway. If you land super high on the hill, rollaway potential exists. We saw that happen with Bradley Williams throws a forehand in the final round. He rolls OB. Sullivan Tipton throws a forehand. He lands more center of the fairway. He stays flat. So I do think it's very interesting. I wouldn't say it's too fluky. And another, like a point that amateurs try to believe in is the second guy is always better. I love stroke and distance for the pros because it allows them to have to make a correction and throw a solid shot afterwards. We critiqued AB for not making a correction on hole 16 at European Open. And I think that this course, if you have stroke and distance more often, makes people have to adjust.
That's a good point. And I do think a lot of the fairways, like you mentioned, do kind of fit that bill. I would argue that on hole 5, the left side, the far left side is actually a lot of the danger of rollaways there. Some of the fairways, some of the forehands that were coming in a little bit too close to the water were kicking up around there. Brodie can speak from experience. Hunter, what do you think?
I have to disagree with some of the points that have been made because although the fairways are 60 feet wide, we're not ever aiming just for the center of the fairway unless we're just playing for par. And a lot of times, for instance, we'll use hole 5. It's been talked about a lot. The closer you get to OB, the easier that last shot across the water gets. So I think that's where stuff comes into play. You can't shake your head. No, it cuts off distance.
no one's trying to aim at 5 feet away from the water, Hunter.
I fully disagree. You might not be, but I've watched players play. There are players trying to aim that close to the water. But what you have to realize, where I do agree, is when you're aiming towards OB and trying to push your edge towards OB to make things lucky, you're playing the risk-reward play, and therefore you shouldn't be surprised when it doesn't go your way because the closer you play to OB, the more you increase your risk. And then, sure, the smaller of margins you're playing with, but you're choosing to bring the smaller margins into play. You do have 60 feet of wide open landing space that you can pick. But the more aggressive you get, then yes, you're missing by a small margin from what you're aiming to do, but you're bringing the risk in. That's your own decision. That's your own fault. And I think what Brodie pointed out is exactly right, which is you're never faced with this all year. So players are kind of soft in the aspect that when they're actually punished for trying to be aggressive and it not going to play, and then they're like, this is just ridiculous, man. I was throwing the disc just as good last year. You got punished because you're trying to bring a more OB into play, trying to be aggressive, trying to shorten the shot, trying to go for the eagle, trying to do whatever, and then you miss by small margin, and then you're upset. But there are safer plays out there. Players just aren't used to having to think on every single shot, and the Pro Tour's kind of conditioned them for that, because Brodie's also right. Throwing to 35 feet is not a good shot, and USDGC will actually punish you for that, whereas other courses just like, oh, I just have to make a putt now. Whereas here, it's like, oh, I might have to rethrow, or I might have a putt from the hazard. Another hole that I think it proves my point here as well is hole 3, the par 4, where you have to go down and then go to the right. You have to push to the left if you want a chance at birdieing that hole. The more you push to the left, the closer you are to OB. That's what's beautiful about this course design, is you have to push that OB. If you land in the middle of the fairway, you're pinched off and you can't have that angle into the green. So you have to push the green, and that shrinks your margins. But you're the one making the decision to shrink those margins, so you can't be upset when that doesn't go in your favor.
Okay. Might go back to that in a second, but Jason, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I definitely agree with some of the points that were made. I would say that the main thing that hasn't been fully said is that the theme of this course is mental warfare. I don't think that any of the shot shapes are that difficult on this course. I've seen so many single angle hyzers, simple flex shots. All the pros, after they talk about their time at Winthrop Gold, is that they got beaten down at one point. And they get beaten down because some of these teeth that they've talked about on the course, such as these sloped greens, sloped fairways, that at the end of the day, there's going to be bad calls and bad luck for someone throughout the round, and it's how you battle back from it. And that's why they get so frustrated, because they're like, oh, it's just a simple 350-foot hyzer. I should have made that every single time. And then that's what really starts to get them down. I wanted to touch on one of the teeth, though, that I think is really important, and that's the stroke and distance one. And I think that that's just great for the game. I think that the whole point of stroke and distance is to elevate the best part of disc golf, and that's watching the disc fly. Unfortunately, right now, course design is just so focused on from tee to pin and that shot shape in the course design. And if players aren't executing those shots well, I'd like to see them honestly redo it, then have to potentially just go do a drop zone putt from 30 feet away. You really got to embrace the roots of our game, and that's watching the disc fly.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that the any disc golf hole that just ends in like a weird unmakeable drop zone putt from like 60 feet is like the most boring thing ever. Shout out the some of the holes at USDGC hole 9. Yeah,
hole 9.
That was it still bad this year? I didn't really pay attention.
It's same exact drop zone. It's right
Same
behind
one.
that little putt.
Yeah, it's just like
little tree.
It's like, here, you're gonna make bogey, but you can't make par. We put it here anyways. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Brodie, would you like to retort now?
I mean, the biggest thing is like if you think people are trying to land a shot on hole 5, I know what Hunter's saying, but like hole 5 is not a good example. No one's trying to throw their second shot 5 feet away from the water. You can literally throw a straight putter, which if you watch most players there, they throw straight putters down the middle of the fairway, or they throw a forehand away from the water. The only time you really are seeing the water come into play is if someone's throwing like a big hyzer, they're too far right on their tee shot and they have to go big hyzer over the road. Again, though, if you think about it, the second shot is anywhere from like 400 feet is like the farthest you're going to see with a good second shot. And that is like up on the fairway. Getting close to the water to have a 365-foot shot is not worth the risk. I mean, maybe some people were doing it and they're probably further down the leaderboard where I was. So yeah, I no one that I played with, no one that I talked to is trying to land 5 feet from the water on that hole. It just, the risk reward's not there. Now, like a good one would have been like hole 6, the beach hole. People are trying to park that hole, which is 5 feet away from the water. I saw some people like play the forehand play, like Robert Burridge, who had like a ridiculous first round. He threw a forehand like zone type of shot off the tee just to give himself an easy pitch up par. And I think the interesting thing, and you guys kind of mentioned this on Grip Lock, the interesting thing here is if you walk into this course and told everyone all you need to shoot is 7 under each round and you'll win this tournament. That's where it's so hard because I try to birdie every single hole, and that's where you get in really a lot of trouble. If I was like, oh, I'm not going to even try to birdie 6, I'm not even going to try to birdie 7, and you start taking some of these holes out, and you're like, I'm only going to try to birdie these 9 holes because I'm probably going to get half of them and maybe get a couple more, then it makes the course so much easier. But that's just not how anyone plays it. Everyone tries to get birdies on all these holes, and that's where you start ending up getting those big numbers.
Big Hunt, any further statement?
I mean, the whole point I was trying to make, which I think Brodie agreed with, was people aren't trying to play in the dead center of the fairway on every single shot. There's certain advantages to being more towards OB on one side or the other, which shrinks your margins. And the more you push it, the more your margins shrink for error.
Yeah, it was just 5 was a terrible example of that.
I don't think it's
You
terrible.
are actually trying to throw it in the middle. You're trying to throwing it in the middle of the fairway.
I saw enough people go in the water that if they were trying to go in the middle of the fairway, they really screwed up.
Yeah, I can attest. Yes.
All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna get on to the juicy stuff, the good stuff here. Holland Hanley, hole 18. This was quite a phenomenon. If you are not filled in on this, basically what happened is Holland Hanley is on chase card. Hole 18, she just needs to walk in the tournament at this point. Just kind of stay safe. She throws her drive a forehand. It's skirting the left side. It hits a bush or tree, drops down out of bounds. She then proceeds to go up to kind of where it landed, takes a drop from there, ends up getting a good enough score to get her into a playoff with Kristen Tatar. Now, here's the problem, is that if you look at the replay, that disc never crossed inbounds. I think that's the consensus, is that though it was pretty close, that disc never crossed inbounds. She should have had to effectively re-tee, which would have greatly changed that hole. Having to re-tee with that pressure could have gone out of bounds again very easily. Kristen Tatar could have won in regulation. So a lot of people were quick to go to the internet and call Holland Hanley a cheater. More information has surfaced since. It's definitely been a hot topic. So I'm just looking for your overall take on the Holland Hanley situation on hole 18. Did she knowingly cheat? What is going on here? Robbie C.
I think, did she knowingly cheat? Like, no. I fully believe. In what world is a competitor know it? Like, she's not on 4th or 5th card, and here's a chance where I can sneak this up. She has her competitor standing right behind her. She has cameras standing right there. So even if some crazy world Holland decides, this is where I get them, this is where I pull the wool over their eyes, like, that was never going to work. So do I think she knowingly cheated? Absolutely not. Trying to put myself in similar scenarios of, I have hit a tree, I have done something like, okay, I have to look for the disc to fall out of the tree. I've got to look for that moment of it to happen. I even get surprised sometimes when I watch it of, oh no, the disc just popped out in that moment. So the disc pops out, lands very close to the OB line. If anyone's saying she's a dirty, rotten cheater, it was so obvious, blah, 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 you're watching the replay frame by frame in the moment, in the anticipation. I think she barely has a chance to see it if she sees it. Card mates definitely in the wrong place. I'll let other people get the points for talking about that part of it. But I definitely don't think she cheated. Also, how many times have you seen a Plinko board in life drop straight down? So it hits this tree and works its way. It had to work its way down through the tree. So sure, in theory, it could have just dropped straight down and never gone OB. But like I said, we see Plinko boards go around. So if it was as close as it was already to getting inbounds, we can't know for certain while it bounces through that tree that it didn't do that. Sure, odds are that it stayed out of bounds the whole time. But do I think Holland knowingly cheated? I think that's where we have to we got to back it up, people, and stop chasing down Holland for this. Also, the final point I'll address is that everyone talked about she pushed it, that she didn't argue for her spot. They just kind of gave it to her. The story that she continues to give in post-run interviews, and the story is the same across all of them, is that she walked off the tee. She thought that it hit inbounds, and obviously she's a little biased in the situation. She walks over to her card. She asks Alexis Mandujano. Alexis says she thinks it's in. Missy thinks it's in. And then also a marshal was with the card and confirmed with both players and all of them to make sure they were talking about it. We had to wait on the backup to clear in front of them. So that's why it didn't look like something was going down, because the conversation already happened off camera.
Okay. All right, Hunter. What do you think? You agree?
Yeah. Well, first off, there's no way to say 100% that she didn't cheat because only she knows that information. But there's also zero evidence to suggest that she did cheat. Because we have the benefit, as Robbie said, of watching this from the perfect angle as often as we want. And when we're watching it, most of us are now watching it with this mindset of let's watch this disc with the intention of knowing, does it ever cross inbounds? She's watching it, rooting for it to be inbounds, and her focus is solely on this disc and the flight of the disc. She's not paying attention to where the OB line is, because that's the other thing, is typically when you're playing a disc golf course and it's near water, typically the water's the OB line. So if you hit a tree, you're just by nature, you had to have hit inbounds. So that's a very common thing to think in general anyways. But she's paying very close attention to the disc here and the flight here and trying to see, like, is it going to just get safe, period? Then it lands OB, and now she's having to think back and play it back in her head, and she doesn't have the benefit of watching this perfect angle like we do. Her card mates are off like 40 feet to the right. They have no chance of seeing if this thing ever crossed inbounds or not. It could have crossed inbounds way earlier for all they know. They can't tell. So it's literally only her. And I think the perfect example of this, I don't know if y'all saw it, but when I was in middle school, there was this video that went viral, right? And it basically was, there's these two teams playing basketball, passing the ball around. One team was white, one team was black. And you had the guys in the white shirt, and it basically said how many times the guys in the white shirt passed the basketball. And they pass it, and you're just focused in. That's all you care about, which for her, all she cared about is my disc getting in bounds. Then you get to the end, you know the answer. It's like 11 or something of how many times the white team passed the ball. And then the announcer comes on and is like, well, did you see the moonwalking bear? And you're like, the moonwalking what? Like, no, you're pulling my leg. And then sure enough, you watch it back and there's a freaking moonwalking bear that goes across the screen because you're not looking for that. You're looking for this. That's this. The disc being OB the whole time is Holland's moonwalking bear. She had no way to know. I think that she was just paying attention to one aspect. And then she did the exact right thing. She talked to the marshal. She talked to her card. And all of them said, yeah, you crossed in bounds up there. No reason to believe she cheated.
Unbelievable. Moonwalking bear. All right, Jason, what do you think? Do you agree? Was it a moonwalking bear?
Jeez, I have no idea what you guys are even talking about. She clearly cheated us. She cheated everyone. The main thing that she cheated us out of was an epic sporting moment. She had an opportunity to do the right thing. She knew that she pulled her shot as soon as she threw it. She mentioned that in the comment when the disc was in the air. She saw that it wasn't hyzering back towards inbounds at first. And she had a pretty good idea that that was not the shot that she meant to throw and that it probably wasn't in bounds. She cheated us of watching her have to re-tee and try to earn it again the right way. I would say this, as a fan, I'm really disappointed in that. I think from her card mate perspective, I think that I don't believe right now from what I've seen that the pros really like stroke and distance and they think that it's too punishing. So I don't think that her card mates wanted to do that to her if there was any type of leeway, which obviously there was since it was a close call. But between that, it's just unfathomable to me. I would say also that I don't think that she necessarily cheated in that sinister way that Robbie brought up. But I mean, I rewatched the video a ton of times to kind of read her body language and see what's going on. Because her arms crossed, her lips pierced, she storms off of the tee box. And when she gets up to her lie, she barely made any effort to try to get any type of conclusion about maybe what happened. She would have probably noticed that the ground spiked where her disc hit and would have looked different. And then just the physics of the shot make no sense. She pulled her shot left over the water, and then it barely turned. It turned a little bit, but it was way before inbounds was ever even in question. And then it has to hyzer back, and it finishes left of the out of bounds line. Just physics, it makes no sense. So I think that at the end of the day, I think, A, the rule has to start getting changed. I know there's not money in the sport. We need more marshals making calls because, I mean, Missy's one of her good friends. There's also a 16-year-old on the card. She's not making the second call. I just think it was a really poor situation, and we were cheated of an epic sporting moment. And I think Kristen was cost her 1,000 rating this week because of it, too.
Oh, dang.
Mic drop.
Well, in fairness, ratings don't
Ratings
count.
don't
for
I was like,
count.
can I
Yeah.
address like 6 things? They're just misconceptions that were just put out there that just make no sense.
There was some inconsistencies there.
Or I'll wait till
You kind
just
of have to
come
wait
back
for the
me
turn
after
to
Brodie.
finish,
Just
though,
get back
Hunter,
to
and
me
then you
after
can come
Brodie.
back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brodie, you can go ahead.
Well, I can add to Hunter's inconsistencies with saying his take is absolutely terrible. The idea that you can only focus on inbounds and therefore you're not focusing on out of bounds makes no sense. Those things go hand in hand. If you're literally trying to focus on your disc going inbounds, you are focusing on your disc being out of bounds. I don't understand what you're saying of like, oh yeah, she's just watching it being inbounds and she's not even paying attention to. No, she's watching it, seeing if it goes inbounds because her disc is out of bounds and she realizes that. Also, the camera angle, the way that that hole works, it makes it look like it's closer at the beginning of the flight because a lot of that grass looking stuff is like swamp. And so all that's OB. Her disc was never close to being in bounds until the very end of the flight, like the last few frames. That's when her disc was close to being in bounds. Everything else, not close at all. I'm gonna counter a little bit. Yeah, you can't, like, no one goes out on the dock to watch shots. We all are probably 30 to 40 feet. I think that's accurate, right of the tee pad. There's nothing in our way to be obstructed. It's not like we now have a blind shot. So everyone should have been able to see her disc coming in and see the line. Now, the question of like, could you see the line from that far away or not? That is a legitimate question because, I think that shot's like 300 feet away. So it's not terribly far, but yeah, that line is probably not going to stand out as much as, a raised string line or post or something of that nature. The two things that everyone are missing. The first one, Jason was the only one that brought it up. Elezra. What is it?
Eliezra.
Okay. Eliezra is on that card. No one has asked her anything. Everyone's like, oh, they talked to Missy. They talked to Alexis. No one has even brought up her. So I'm very curious to see what she has to say, if she did say anything at all. And then the second thing is, we all played 4 rounds out there. The way that every single spotter reacted on every single hole was consistent. If the disc went out of bounds, regardless of whether it was 200 feet away from them or not, they ran to the spot and put a flag of where it crossed. That was consistent throughout the entire course. The spotter was standing right there. The spotter actually had probably the best view. If you look, you can see in the background the spotter standing right down the line. The disc goes out of bounds. The spotter doesn't move. He raises up red flag, waves it, and doesn't run up to the spot. We all played the same course 4 rounds. That right there was the indicator that the spotter did not think it ever crossed.
Okay, let's go back to Jason for a second, then I'll get to Brodie. Jason said a few things I want to address. The first thing, you mentioned stroke and distance. This isn't stroke and distance. They're teeing from OB. That's completely different rules because if they cross inbounds and then go OB, they're allowed to advance, which is what she did. You mentioned looking for a mark where the disc hit and then went out of bounds. That was never the argument. The argument is, did the disc ever cross inbounds during the flight or hit the tree and trickle inbounds? So where a disc would have landed and then rolled out wouldn't have mattered. There was another point, but in Brodie's chaos, I forgot what my other point was. But those are the two main ones.
Chaos.
Brodie's points. Well, we just had a whole off-camera shenanigans, man.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's chaos.
Brodie's points. Let's get to Brodie's points now. Spotter up the hill. I was there. I was off to the side, about as high up the hill as the spotter was. I was asking everyone. The only person that seemed to know anything was like, this guy goes, oh, wow, they're giving her the spot up there. I didn't know if she got it. The spotter's up the hill. He also doesn't have the best angle at it, and it is a well-known fact, spotters are not officials. The spotter could have put a flag, not put a flag there. What the card says and what the marshal says on the card, that's the final decision. The spotter has no weight in this decision. The spotter, yeah, exactly. Look how far right he is of where that disc
tough.
goes. He's so far right.
He's
What are you talking about?
That's exactly. Of the fairway.
Yeah, but he's so
on
far
the left
right
side
of where
of the
it goes.
Fairway.
Yes,
but
he is
right
looking
down the OB line.
He's looking down.
Right down the line.
Yeah, how far right of where the disc ended up? How far right is he? It's at least 30 to 40 feet.
Hunter, the fairway turns. It curves. He's literally looking down the OB line. He's
You're
standing looking
contradicting
down.
yourself.
He's not
If the
blocked.
fairway turns and curves, he is farther up than where the disc hit. Both can't be true. Either the fairway's dead straight and he's looking straight down the line.
He is further down the fairway than where the disc hit.
Yes.
He's not
So
obstructed from the view of the disc
therefore,
in the OB.
He's farther right, though. He doesn't have a clear-cut straight angle. To be straight, he'd have to be deep in the woods.
I don't know how to make it more
Okay,
clear. That is the line right there, and he's staring down the line. I don't know how to make it more clear.
Okay, for audio listeners, I'm sorry, but I gotta do.
Here we go.
No,
we have
arts and crafts time.
I mean, the guy's standing, looking down at the line. Here we go.
I'd have to agree. Even if his Hunter is explaining, even if his angle wasn't perfect, it was darn good.
It was way better than anyone else.
And I will
He's
say,
way closer than anyone else.
He does. It's not like he just waved his flag and stood still. He does approach it as the video plays out. He does approach it, and you can even see him pull a flag out.
Here's what we got here, right? The
he ends up not doing it.
Right here is the tee pad. Hey, this square. This is where Holland Hanley's standing. Right here is where the disc goes.
I can't see that.
Right here,
the
where my
amount
finger
of compression on this where
my
screen
finger is right
so
here.
I can see it.
That is where the disc goes OB.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Down here, about 30 to 40 feet right, is where her card mates were, looking at a sideways angle. From a sideways angle, things are warped. You can't tell. Straight up the OB line, yes, but farther to the up here, which we can see by the picture Brodie's showing. Thank you, Brodie. That's really helping me. From there, that's where the spotter is, also looking at an angle. So both of these are making a triangle. They're both looking at an angle. Neither of them are straight on. If you're straight on, the spotter would have to be here.
The line that the disc almost hit is at an angle, which is what the angle is the spotter's looking down.
Correct. That's the corner. The spotter would have to be right here to have the perfect angle. He's not. He's up here. So therefore, the spotter doesn't have a perfect angle
Where
either.
is the fairway turn, though? Like, is the fairway
It's like
turn
this. It
towards
goes
the spotter?
Yes.
Yes.
But so he's
That's
on the direct
corner.
line.
That's the corner.
So he's on the perfect line.
But that's the corner. That's the corner. The OB comes
Which
straight
he's
from
on,
the tee
so
and
you
then
can literally
turns.
see if it crossed the corner or not.
There's a corner. If the OB was straight the whole way, then yes, he's looking down it. But it turns right here. He's looking into the corner.
So you're saying the disc, whether or not it crosses on the straight before it gets to the corner. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. So you get to the corner, and he's looking down to the corner. He doesn't have a good angle. The people next.
Oh yeah, if it was short.
The only person that has a good angle is Holland Hanley. That is the only person.
And Holland said in post-round interviews that she saw it touch. She saw it touch and bounds is what she said. So she's saying that it touch and bounds. It never did. It makes no sense then.
Did she commit perjury?
No, because here's the other thing that I wanted to mention with Brodie's point. Brodie said you can't, if you're focusing on inbounds and you're also focusing on out of bounds.
I'll give you a point for that drawing. That was fun.
Those are two completely different things. One, you're focusing on will my disc result in a safe shot? The other is in the flight that results in that safe shot, did it ever cross over? Those are two completely different mindsets. We're watching with the secondary mindset of did that disc ever cross? She's watching with the first mindset of am I getting safe? Those are two completely different mindsets. Moonwalk.
This is not hole 5. Hole 5 is one of those throws where you throw and you're like, I'm seeing if my disc crossed before it goes out of bounds. Her disc is out of bounds the entire way. The only chance it has to get inbounds is at the very end of the flight. So no one is saying like, oh, is it crossing now? Is it crossing now? That's not a discussion. The discussion is at the very end when it hits that tree. You now have realized when it hits that tree, the disc has never crossed in bounds. Now you're just hoping it lands in bounds outside of the tree. You're not assuming those. You're throwing over water, Hunter. That's all water. No one's assuming anything.
But if you go a straight line from that tee to that tree.
No, the only part of the tree that might be inbounds is like the very outside, like few leaves.
Looks like
it might be inbounds.
The only person that knows if Holland Hanley cheated is Holland Hanley. And if she's saying on record, I didn't cheat, I asked my card mates, they all said I'm inbounds, we cannot say she's a cheater. You cannot say that.
I'm not saying she's a cheater. I actually don't know if she knowingly did or not. I'm going to be asking her on tour life, obviously. But what I'm saying is the matter of fact is. The matter of fact is the spotter did not go there. And I think
I don't think the spotter had a good angle. The only person that had a good angle is Holland.
Maybe there's a bigger issue with staffing. We need to be looking at these OB lines. Something to think about. All right. Okay, some split opinions there. Very interesting. Well, we're
I'll
gonna
sign
kind of
this diagram and send it to Brodie. That way
we're
he has
gonna
my drawing.
Your diagram's
gonna-
trash.
dang. We're gonna kind of segue into a second part of this point that I think we can all agree on, which is video evidence. Well, I agree with this statement. Video evidence shows the disc did not cross inbounds.
Yes.
Does everybody agree with that?
Correct.
Okay, so if video evidence was allowed to be used, this call would have been reversed, as long as it wasn't the guys that officiate the Premier League, because they're blind.
Or MLB umpires.
Yeah, as long as it wasn't Angel Hernandez. So that had a lot of other people talking about the use of video replay. People, obviously, if you're a big Kristen Tatar fan, that's really frustrating when you see something happen that essentially shouldn't have. You see a rule that was it's like an obvious pass interference that wasn't called. Sorry, Saints fans. Anyways, so the question here is obviously we know there are some pitfalls to video evidence being used for replays. We know that there are downsides, but would the greater good of using them be bigger than the evil or the downsides of using them if it could be used to reverse rulings like the one on hole 18? Would there be more positives than negatives? That's the question, Hunter.
No, absolutely not. I think that this provides a huge disadvantage/advantage to being on lead or chase card right now, and therefore it makes it unfair to everyone else in the field. I don't think that video evidence should be allowed to be used until every single shot on the Pro Tour is being filmed, or every single shot during that tournament is being filmed, because if not, it's unfair. Because then if you get picked for feature card, there could be a situation like this that provides the exact opposite, where everyone thinks it never hit in bounds. Video evidence shows it does. Now Ricky advances up, whereas had it not been, then Ricky or Paul or whoever wouldn't have advanced. They would have been re-teamed. And therefore, that video evidence now just provided possibly a stroke in their advantage. And on the flip side of that coin, it could be the exact same situation we were just in, where Holland doesn't get to advance. But 2 rounds ago, Kat Merch is on a different card that's not filmed. The exact same thing happens, and she does get to advance. So filming just makes things less fair, and there's advantages/disadvantages being provided to the cards that are being filmed versus not being filmed. So I don't think it's fair until it's available for every shot, every card across the board. And in order to do that, we would need cameras on every hole that could be accessed and replayed when something's brought up. We would need marshals or all of that. And I think there's a lot better money, or a lot better ways to spend the money required to do that than on camera replays that would have helped like the triple Mando of Paige Pierce and this, and maybe like one other call in the history of our sport.
Yeah, I don't know. Jason, do you agree?
Well, I think that we definitely need video evidence, because look at what's happening today and what happened on Twitter after the result. The storyline probably should have been Holland Hanley chases down with a 10 down on the final day to take down a big win, a major in our hearts. Instead, we've been talking about this cheating allegation that easily could have been resolved. Her name doesn't even have to be smeared by me right now, but whatever. I would just say this. I would say that the best way to enforce this idea of having video replay that needs to be addressed is that we can take it from the best of some of each sport. I think that a call needs to be made on the field, either by the card mates still, or hopefully by a marshal at some point, because we do need to remove some of this subjectivity and this whole playfulness between card mates, because they don't want to rub people the wrong way. And that it should be done in a timely manner too. And the video evidence has to confirm that ruling. It has to completely overturn whatever the call is on the field, and needs to be done quickly, because at the end of the day, disc golf right now is for the fans. Until that there's enough outside funding to make the tours happy, we need to keep growing the sport. We need to make the fans happy. And it's just really sad that the storyline today is in a 10 down final round. It's that she potentially got away with one.
Interesting points. Brodie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's where it kind of goes back to, what we were just talking about, which I don't want to dive too much into. But if she would have said, hey, you know what, I don't think I actually did cross, and then she ended up still winning, then this whole storyline goes completely away. So it is an unfortunate one, but it's one that obviously everyone has to talk about. I don't like the video evidence situation for disc golf. Hunter made a lot of good points on just the fact that we don't even have enough cameras to cover the actual event. How the heck are we going to cover? How are we going to even cover? All the OB lines? How are we going to cover any? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's also going to be really weird when you have video evidence and then you're just like, oh yeah, that our cameras didn't see that, so we have no idea. It's just going to add to it, which I don't like. And then on top of that too, the biggest one, which Jason kind of alluded to a little bit, was just the speed. I'm a big pace of play guy. Everyone knows. The last thing I want to see is us add in something that is now going to make more people stand around and wait. Also, where is this? Is this just going into some magical cloud that someone is just sitting? We're paying someone just to sit and wait for these calls to come. I mean, it doesn't make any sense as far as logistically, and then also just from the fans' point of view, like having to watch that happen. We're not going to have like a big screen in the NFL where they do like slow-mo and we're like, oh my gosh, he caught it. There isn't going to be any of that. You're just going to be standing there waiting, and then all of a sudden someone's just going to come and be like, you were inbounds, and you're just like, oh, okay. So I don't like it.
Okay. All right, Robbie, do you concur?
Going last on this one, knew a lot of good points would be out there, but thankfully the major storyline wasn't touched. So have we ever seen a review in any pro sport be wrong?
Yes.
Yeah, right. We've all experienced that before. So I agree with Brodie. Who's making the calls? If an official has to be the one to even throw it to video review, like umpires and referees can do now, this was the perfect opportunity for referees and officials to do so. There was a marshal on their card. There was a marshal on lead card. They're all standing right there. And no one, like the marshals aren't forcing the issue on this one. So who's to say that they're even throwing it to video review here? Because the marshals obviously didn't see this as a scenario that they had to step in and intervene. But the true storyline in the video replay that we really need to be looking at here takes us back to a month or two ago on the beach, and we're hanging out with two people right here. We have a young Missy Gannon and Paige Pierce hanging out, and they're talking. And I'm going to take you to a caption because someone was involved during this whole incident.
Did you take that photo?
No, I did not take that photo. I was not hanging out with them that close to get that photo. So, wow, this is going to be one of the craziest battles against one of the best FBO players of all time. Then talking about Missy, she's my best friend, maid of honor, and my sister. And who is on the card? Missy Gannon in this moment. Paige Pierce sitting there manifesting that disc to go OB because what she wanted was another Kristen Tatar failure. She wanted Kristen to not get the mega sweep happening this year so that Paige could retain her GOAT status, holding on to it. And so she said, Missy, I need you to play really good, but not so good that you're on lead card with her. And in this moment, here's how we get her. Here's how we lay it down. And boom. The whole thing plays out. Missy probably was already texting Paige saying it's happening. Didn't even see the shot happen. Next thing you know, bada boom, bada bang. Holland on top.
So Missy's the
What
hit
does that have to do
person.
with video evidence?
That the video evidence there being that we have a moment of where it all happened, where the plan went down. Throw pink. If you look, there's even pink in the photo. I'm just saying, guys. I'm just saying.
The signs, man. It's the signs.
That was fun.
Trevor, can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people are just
What
calling out the
hearts?
What just happened? Do that again.
A lot of people are just calling out the.
What did I do? Sorry. I don't know how I just got hearts.
Okay, go ahead, Jason.
Shenanigans on debate night as always. I would just say though that some of the main criticisms against video replay are just the execution of it at this current stage. But at the end of the day, we all agree that disc never came in with the video replay that came in. It was done swiftly. People knew, and it was a material impact on the event. I think that we easily could have changed that. And also, I know that Robbie went on this whole conspiracy theory, but there is a small conspiracy that needs to be addressed, and it's that Holyn, she didn't maliciously cheat, but she's taking the social construct of the game that you need your card mates to second you, and she wasn't. She was just super shy and quiet about the whole situation, just hoping for public kindness to just push her in bounds.
She
Like
knowingly,
that was the
knowingly-
point. That was
Yeah.
the point I wanted to bring back up. Thank you for mentioning that again. You keep alluding to that.
Thank
It
you for
wasn't
the point,
discussed.
Hunter.
It was.
Thank you for the
It was
point.
clearly discussed. It's been told by the
Yeah.
marshal. It's been told in interviews. This was all discussed. Probably while you were watching your precious interview, they were over there actually talking, doing business, and deciding we're fine to go up there because we all watched it. We know we're fine to move up. It was discussed. it looked rushed because of how the coverage cut it together, but it was discussed, confirmed by 4 people.
It was.
I blame
discussed
I
according-
blame coverage there. You don't turn the cameras away from that situation. You
I
show
fully
what-
agree.
what
Yeah.
goes
I fully
down.
agree, because
That
then
was pretty
Jason might
bad.
be on a whole different point of view and stop trying to slander Holland Hanley's name.
It was
as
tough.
a cheater.
Jason wasn't
You
on
know,
the grounds.
realistically, let's put it this way, okay? The real storyline here is the Facebook Karens that want to call her a cheater and take away from her great comeback that she did justly, rightfully. She did everything right. She did everything she could do, and she won. And instead of that being the storyline, we got a bunch of Facebook Karens chirping
Yeah.
away. About
Hunter,
how
I'm gonna
she's
have
a
to
cheater.
talk to you offline too to see if
Unfortunately.
our stories match of what I've been told. So
I
will
was
say-
there. I was standing
was
there
there,
next
man.
to you,
no,
this
no,
guy.
no, no. I'm saying I'm curious to see. Yeah,
Anywho, I will say the video evidence thing, while I definitely agree with the idea that I think there's way too many issues with it, it is one of those things where, like, we use the word unfair. Well, technically, whatever should get called by video evidence would be the fair result because it is what happened.
Well, it's unfair to the people that don't have that advantage.
Isn't
of
an
knowing
advantage,
what
though.
happened.
But then
Yes.
Those guys aren't
yeah,
even
you did
competing
say-
for the
Hunter,
win.
Well, Hunter, you did say in your statement it's unfair due to some people getting strokes and losing strokes. Does that balance it out, though, and make it
No.
fair? Why?
No, I mean, it's the same thing in college basketball when you didn't have video evidence across the board because not all schools
guys,
could
what are we
afford it.
talking about here? Certain rules shouldn't apply to some and not apply to others. What are we talking about here? Come on, it is a simple thing. If you can't do it for everyone, then you can't do it. We're not playing
you
two different
can.
sports.
Yes, you
No,
can.
you
can't, Jason.
You can't.
You're talking
If you-
about
so
people
I
that
get
are in
randomly-
10th place. No
My
one on
name
third
gets
card
drawn
has
out of a
ever
hat,
won
Yeah,
and I'm
we've
on
never
feature
seen
card
someone like
round
a
one,
Simon
and I get the
Lizotte that was in
benefit of
10th
it.
place after round 3 win a tournament. You're right. We've never seen that.
You can't have it. Like, feature card happens every week, and there's just a sponsor exempt player. He's not on lead card. He now is under the scrutiny of video review, and in
That's
the next
one
round he's not.
shot in round 1. This is round
You can't
4.
have different
final
rules for
shot in
different
round
players.
one
You
gets
can't
Holland
have
Hanley out of
different
a
rules
playoff
for
and she
different
wins.
players. What
I
are
don't
we
care
talking
who
about?
wins. I don't care who comes in 9th versus 10th. This was 1st versus 2nd. That's a big deal. I don't know. I think
One
she cheated.
stroke in round 1 is the difference between first
Correct.
and
Yeah.
second.
What are we talking about? We can't have different rules for the different part of the field. I mean, I think that's a very cut
No,
and dry, black and white.
You guys
situation.
know that strokes in round 1 are different than strokes in round 4. There's momentum. There's pressure on
Oh,
opponents.
try to
Don't
talk
try to
Brodie
go
about
on Hunter's
momentum.
side with momentum. Don't
Don't
you
try to
dare
bring
go
up
on Hunter's
momentum
side
to
with
Brodie.
Listen,
One on the scorecards and one on the
Listen,
scorecard.
I do agree. I don't think it should be implemented. However, I will say it is just a shame when a tournament ends in a way that it shouldn't have clearly. That is a shame. That's all I'll say about it. It's a shame. All right, we're going to talk a little bit of MPO. Kyle Klein wins USDGC. I feel like this happens every time he wins. And by every time, I mean it happened once earlier this year where we kind of like, oh, Kyle Klein, yeah, he's really good. And we look at his stats and we're like, man, maybe we don't talk about Kyle Klein enough. So here's my question. Kyle Klein adds a major to his already impressive resume this season. Quite a bit of top 20s, top 10s, a win at an elite earlier this year. So adding that major to his total, where should he finish in player of the year voting? I think, 1 would be a little outrageous, but where does he rank amongst the other elite players of this season, adding that major into the argument? Jason.
Yeah, so for me, player of the year, I think what matters is whose year would I want to have? Whose year am I going to remember in a few years? And for that, I think winning the big titles is the biggest factor. I think winning in general is important, then consistency, then performance at the majors. So therefore, I have him at about 4th place. He was 8th in DGPT points coming in, but 6 to 8 were within 35 points, and his major clearly covers that gap. So then I need to compare him against 4 and 5 in my list roughly, which I have as Eagle and Ricky. Unfortunately, Eagle's never won a 4-day tournament this year. So even though he's had really good consistency, he's never really put his stamp on a really quality win this season, and I think that's a big deal. Also, Ricky's biggest win was at the Preserve, which even though it was an Elite Plus, is probably one of the weaker tournaments per se, because it's as you're getting ready to go to Europe. And a lot of people just were probably checked out at that point because it was also the 3rd DGPT event in 3 weeks in a row. It's not like you're coming in fresh, ready to go for a major. My top 3 is Isaac, Calvin, and Gannon in that order. And I think that all their resumes definitely beat Kyle's, though, for what I said.
Okay. Yeah, I like that, sitting Kyle in the 4th spot there. Brodie, do you agree?
Bro, I have no idea, man. I feel like player of the year, no one has any idea what they're talking about. Everyone has a different as far as like everyone has a different opinion on what should matter. Because like, are we doing like college football rankings where if you lose, in October or if you lose in September, that's way better than losing later in the season because that's how that works, right? I don't know. So like, does a win first 2 months of the season count less than a win later in the season?
It's a voting
I don't know
system.
what
It's your opinion. It's votes.
No, I know, and I think that's where it's tough is because like everyone has their own idea of what player of the year means to them, which I guess makes it more fascinating because people are just throwing numbers out.
Yeah.
Kyle Klein's definitely was not on my radar before this tournament. I think he kind of had some good finishes here and there, but he wasn't really putting himself kind of at the top billing of the storylines that we had. I mean, I think I got to have Calvin ahead of him. I think I have to have Isaac ahead of him. I think there's an argument to have Eagle and even Gannon ahead of him. You look at another major champion winner this season, like a Corey Ellis. Like, I think obviously Kyle has had a better season than Corey, top to bottom. Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe three. Maybe you could sneak him into the 3 spot. But I think the 4 or 5 spot's probably where he needs to go. Yeah, I don't know.
Very conclusive answer from Brodie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
Robbie,
don't know on this
hit
one.
him with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's in the conversation at all. I think that if you look at how everything shaped out for it, yeah, he has a major win. He has an Elite Series win, but we look at the body of work. Even if I'm looking at what we're saying of Jason, oh man, I want to look at the season that I had. Kyle has his average finish on Elite Series this year, I believe, was 14th. Because while he did have a couple, he has 10 top 10 appearances, but 3 of those are in silver events. So we already know how Foundation seems to feel about those in general. So there are a lot, and that I didn't include his DNF at Preserve, just so everyone's like, oh, statistics are being thrown off. But we like that would tank it even more so, right? So while I think that, yes, I think Brodie's onto a point of recency bias when we get to the end of the season and we're looking, it's like we're looking at Calvin's season and we were a month ago, we were amazed at Calvin's season. Wow, what a time. And now we're done with him. We're throwing him to the curb, trash, washed out, overrated.
I don't think he's trash.
I'm with you. My opinions are very clear on Calvin. So bias is present, but yeah, I think that Kyle had an impressive year. Sure, pulling off the wins that he did, awesome, because he had the win in Waco, and then it felt like he went kind of quiet for a little while, and then pulling out the win this time, fantastic. I think that it's phenomenal, but I'm not going to jump up and woo think that he just did it and now he's Player of the Year. And I think that there are 3 people in the Player of the Year voting, and those 3 people are Isaac, Calvin, and Gannon. And Kyle pushed, but I don't think he pushed near hard enough to get in.
To answer the question, where does he finish?
We'll throw him. I'll throw him 5.
5. So who's your 4 guy? Rick or Eagle?
I'll put Eagle in there.
Okay, but he jumps Rick.
I think he jumps Rick.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Hunter, I'm interested to hear what you have to say on this one.
This is pretty straightforward. Because Calvin Heimberg has had an incredible season, very consistent season, but he leaves a lot to be desired in the W category. If you look at Isaac Robinson, 2 majors, that's as good as what, like 4 wins? We could go like 3.5 wins, depending on how much you value a major. To me, it's pretty close to 4. You have Gannon Burr, 3 Elite Series wins, 2 silver event wins. Those silver events, you got to weigh them out. Blue Ridge Championship, pretty heavy. Other one that he won, not so heavy. So he's also looking pretty close to that Isaac Robinson. I think they're neck and neck. Then you step down to Calvin Heimberg. All right. He's got 2 Elite Series wins, got 1 silver win, hasn't done anything on the W category since April. Sure, he's consistent, but being consistently a loser doesn't really help. Then you bring in Kyle Klein.
Yikes.
Loser in the term of not winning, not loser in life. I would trade my season with Calvin Heimberg. I would trade my season for Calvin Heimberg, but I think Calvin Heimberg would trade his season for Isaac Robinson or Kyle Klein's because they have a major win. In my opinion, I think Kyle Klein and Calvin Heimberg are tied for third. I would give the edge to, if I'm making my list on the player of the year, I think they're tied 3, but Calvin's name's listed above his because of the consistency. Because I think wins-wise, a major, again, depends on how much you value a major. If we value it at 2, he has the 2 wins from the major, and then the win at Waco, there's 3 wins. Calvin, in the same realm, but you got to give him a little bit for consistency. But I realistically think it's a 2-horse race. It's between Isaac and Gannon, and then they're just kind of like the next one's up of like, you had a great season, you didn't quite get it done.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very interesting just because...
Loser was a bit of a strong word.
Hey,
loser in the sense of not winning.
We're here for
Loser.
it. You said
the literal
said.
sense, not the mean sense.
I do think it's very interesting because when you talk, I have to look at the criteria again, but a big part of player of the year is like your Pro Tour points. So Calvin will win that category. And then when it comes down to voting, Calvin will still get a lot of votes. I think there's a very real world where he wins player of the year and I won't really like it.
In my opinion, Calvin Heimberg will get the award player of the year.
Yeah, but will he get
But
the
I don't
grippy?
think I'm talking my player of the year.
Yeah.
Calvin Heimberg's not my player of the year. I think Calvin Heimberg will wipe the floor with everyone and will win player of the year.
Well,
And
yeah,
I'm
your
not saying he
player of the
doesn't
year is
deserve
not a
it.
loser.
I just have a different
So-
mindset on what player of the year. I value wins more than I think the Pro Tour and the media vote will.
Interesting.
And
Gonna be-
it's crazy because it's not like Calvin doesn't have wins. Like that's the issue. Is he has wins.
He has 2 Elite Series and 1 silver. Gannon, 3 Elite Series, 2 silver. Isaac Robinson, 2 majors worth more than Elite Series, and then Kyle Klein, 1 major worth more than Elite Series and 1 Elite Series. So the problem is there's just
So
a
it's
lot of
almost
guys
like
with
there's
similar
only
amount.
one person on tour that has more wins than Calvin.
Right, but
Well, it
one
depends
guy
on how
has
much
2
you value the
majors.
major. It depends on where you put the major
I
value.
know, but I'm just saying, if you're just talking about wins, there's only one person that has more wins than him, and that's Gannon.
That
I would
is
say-
Gannon. But
I would agree
that's
with Hunter, and I would
between it's
say-
Gannon and Isaac is
I
the
would
2-horse
say
race.
I would say Isaac and Gannon have a resume that's pretty strong. If you are of the let's weigh the wins type person, Calvin's season is still special. It's just a darn shame.
Well,
That's
back
all
to
I'll say.
how
It's a darn
Jason put
shame.
it. How Jason put it is kind of the right way in my head of looking at it. And if you asked Calvin at the end of the day, Calvin would 100% trade his season to have a Champions Cup title and a World Championship because that pays.
I
Being
would think.
consistent doesn't pay.
Yeah. I mean, it pays.
Not
but
at the same scale as being a one-time world champ.
yeah, I think I would agree with you. I think you take the majors.
Okay, you
I'm
look-
mostly
look
just
at
frustrated with Calvin that he
who's more
didn't win
valu-
more.
Hunter, who's more valuable or going into 2024, Corey Ellis or Calvin Heimberg?
Corey Ellis won the weakest major. That's a bad argument. We're talking USDGC.
Sorry,
I didn't list Corey Ellis.
Sorry, bad argument.
Did I list
bad
Corey
argument.
Ellis? I don't remember
sorry.
listing him.
You said one major. You
I
said
don't-
they would
I
trade
think-
for
World.
one major.
I don't
I
think
said
Calvin-
world.
Calvin
Is Hunter saying that the European Open is the silver series of majors?
Yes,
I think so.
Absolutely.
Calvin Heimberg wouldn't trade careers with Corey Ellis, but I do think there's a chance he would trade his 2 Elite Series in this year for 1 major, even if it was the European.
Oh,
Open.
absolutely.
I think there's certainly a chance.
Well,
of that.
he would also have to trade in all the other finishes too, though. You can't just.
But the
Trade
record books aren't going to remember 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Record books are going to remember majors.
Heck yeah. Is Calvin going after those record books?
Should be.
If I was a player, I would.
I don't know. All right. We're going to eliminate some people, get some of the chatter out of here. Brodie,
Get me out of
Robbie,
here.
Gonzo. See you later. Hunter and Jason are moving to a rapid fire round. All righty. We are going to, we're going to kind of segue right into what we were kind of just talking about a little bit with our first topic here. We're in the rapid fire round. We got 3 topics. Hunter, you have the lead. Would you like to go first or second?
Give me first this week.
Okay, he wants to go first this week. First question here. Calvin and Ricky finished yet another season with no majors. The slump of Calvin's career continues, and the slump of a good few years continues for Ricky. So the question is, who is going to break this slump first, if ever? Hunter.
This is a very tough one to answer. Because I mean, if you just look at the historical evidence, there you might think they might never break it. I'm gonna have to side with, I think Ricky will break this slump first, mainly because he's already gotten over the edge of winning a major, and I think that's the hardest part to get over. He's dealt with a lot of health issues recently that I think have limited his performance overall, but I think it's a lot easier to win another major versus winning your first major, and both players are capable. Both players most likely will end their career with more majors, but I think it's gonna be more likely Rick.
Okay. Hunter's on Team Rick. Jason, do you agree?
Well, I knew that he wasn't taking Calvin once he called him a loser. So for me, I think that Calvin is definitely a good pick. He has all he is a good mental / putting weekend away from a major. It's like fickle, but everything about his game screams major winner. So if you just keep shooting, one's going to land and one's going to hit. So I will caveat that though, and I don't think it will open the floodgates though. I just see him be a little bit too streaky at times, and that he does have some of these mental hurdles that might only be able to get pushed away every once in a while. Because I mean, he did have some impressive wins and streaks, and he wasn't able to kind of string it together. And also, Ricky, I think he's done. I mean, it's been 7 years. It's not a coincidence at this point.
Ooh, that was like a buzzer beater right there. Okay. Yeah, interesting point. I mean, I would agree with you, Jason, in the sense that it does seem like he should win a major, but he sure hasn't yet, and it is interesting. All right, next question. This one's a little bit of a fun one. So 3 valuable potential free agents. You never know with disc golf what free agency actually is, or if these people signed extension months ago, and everybody's going to be like, hey, they are not even free agents. But I kind of drew up a hypothetical here. So Gannon, Kyle, and Eagle. I threw Kyle into the hat because I think he's a little bit of an under-the-radar guy. I'd like to hear what you say about this. Let's say you are a disc golf manufacturer and you have a 1-year, 3-year, and 5-year deal to offer out. You can only do one to each of them. So if somebody gets the 1-year deal, somebody else can't have it. Who gets what deal? And we're going to assume here that the dollar amount is the same per year for each. So that's the question. Who's getting what deal? Jason, go for it.
Okay, I got Eagle getting the 5-year deal. I think he's about to enter his athletic prime. He just turned 25. 25 to 30 are going to be some great years for him. And I was a little bit nervous, obviously, about the forehand, but he's pretty much shown that that's going to be good. And then I'm actually going to jump down to the 1 year, and I think that should be Gannon. I think he's going to have a slower year this upcoming season. I think that he's only a top player because of his wins, but he's really inconsistent. And a lot of his wins in 2024 are going to be harder to defend. Des Moines is right before the Euro swing. Idlewild is the one before Worlds. And I just don't think he's going to get the confidence boost in his 2 silver wins this year, not being on tour next year. And I think he's also going to struggle with his first time going over to Europe and traveling outside the country. Okay.
So then the 3-year deal to Kyle. That's interesting. Calling Gannon inconsistent. I don't know about that one, but that's interesting. Hunter, what do you think? Who are you giving the deals to?
All right, so I'm going Eagle 5-year, Gannon 3, Kyle 1. I think all 3 have tremendous upside. They're all relatively young for our sport and have a long career ahead of them. But it's not about play on the course. Signing is all about moving plastic, and Eagle's the most proven when it comes to marketing and generating disc sales. So you have to lock in the sure thing there and then go down. I think Gannon's the next most sure, and then Kyle's a third. Performance on the course is only a small part of this equation. That's why Simon Lizotte moves. He's not in the player of the year conversation. We just talked about it, but he moves probably 100 times more plastic than the players that are. And I think that's more where Eagle is. Gannon and Kyle both have tremendous upsides. And I think Gannon's more likely to get there on the marketability side, which is why I would give him the 3 and Kyle the 1.
Tough to argue with disc sales for sure. All right, on to our last topic here. As we talk about the player of the year voting situation, one of the fuzzy kind of criterias that we talk about but aren't really sure about a lot of times is the tour championship. Now, it has changed this year. I would say in years past, giving any credit to the tour champion was a little bit hazy. It's getting a little less hazy now that there's a little bit more of a traditional golf style being played, but there is still some stroke head starts to start the tournament. It's a little interesting. So the question here is, should the tour championship winner be giving any credit towards player of the year voting? If you're sitting down and you're casting your vote, should you really be considering that at all? Should that be part of the equation, Hunter?
So like you said, I think in the current format, it should definitely be considered, but not super heavily. It definitely should be considered more than when it was in the bracket style. I would view it almost as a tiebreaker. So I think realistically, it only matters for Calvin, Isaac, Gannon. Mainly, it only matters for Isaac or Gannon. Either of them win. In my opinion, they've locked it up. They're player of the year. If Calvin wins, I think that's where things get really interesting in my head, because now you have that. Because the stroke heads start, but then it gets erased. It's a weird one. It's still going to be a tough one to win. But in my head, it almost is like a heavily attended silver event. And so it should be treated kind of like a tiebreaker more than an actual full-on Pro Tour event.
Okay, I like that. I kind of wish they would just announce player of the year before this event. It'd make it easier on us all.
It would make life easier.
Jason, what do you think?
Well, it won't matter for FPO. I think Kristen's already locked in player of the year, so I want to get that out there. For FPO, I think that I would also say no. I think for a couple of reasons. One, we need more prestige at the event. The fact that a recent winner can't be Nathan Queen. I hope that he heals up and stuff, but players still want to major over this by a lot more. And the other ideas is that the format's ridiculous to then start giving points out and respect for it. These players that are competing for player of the year are going to make it to the final round, and then it's just a 2-day tournament. I don't care about if you can win a 2-day tournament. It doesn't mean that much. There's a lot more things that are more important. And I wouldn't call this a silver event. I feel like it's more like an all-star event with just a lot of money up top, and people should be going for first place.
Yeah, I see your points on both sides there. Yeah, I think I wish they just did player of the year ahead of time, so we just don't even have to think about it, because it will add recency bias when you see the guy that you're considering holding up a check for $40,000. It's just going to happen. And I agree, Hunter. If Calvin wins that thing, we are just going to have quite a situation on our hands, because
Things get hairy quick.
It's going to get real interesting. All right, Hunter is taking it down today. He is our winner. Congratulations, defeated Brodie with the new laptop. Unreal. Anything to say?
I just want to clarify my stance yet again. It might have come across that way, but I was not trying to call
scared,
Calvin
dude.
Heimberg a loser. Well, that's just rude. That's just mean. That's not what I was trying to say. I was saying loser in the sense of not winning, not loser in the sense of like he's a loser. I just wanted to clarify that. The comments have already massacred me, but that way, if you did happen to watch, man.
Robbie, do you accept this apology on the behalf of Calvin?
No. We remember, but also Paige Pierce fans are going to come after me. So I'm
more scared of Calvin Heimberg fans than Paige Pierce fans.
Hunter's making even more statements.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm more.
You know,
I think there's more
Fierce,
Calvin
right?
Heimberg fans.
You know her name.
Go ahead and
Fierce,
say how
right?
much you hate Taylor Swift too. Just go ahead.
Yeah, you might as well. You're on top of the world right now.
But
Just
yeah,
keep going for it.
You're on a roll.
I'm gonna just hush up while I'm at it.
I'm
Calvin
honored to be
Heimberg's
the
not a
first
loser. That's all I want to
Calvin.
say.
The first
I'm the
what?
first Calvin. I'm the first Calvin, first loser.
The first Calvin of the of your yeah. All right, everybody, that's gonna do it for this episode of Debate Night. Yeah, that was a pretty interesting show. Let us know what you think about the whole controversy in the comments. Be respectful to everybody. Don't call Calvin Heimberg loser, and we'll see you next week.